Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Jake Huger. Co-hosting with me today, Wes Clark Jr. Always great to have him on. JR's producing and Jesus is directing. Wes, you all over the country. Illinois, Alaska.
I was in Arkansas. I was in Arkansas this summer.
Yeah, now
I ran into a Young Turk fan.
Oh, you did?
Of all places, and he was managing an Arab hookah bar in Little Rock, and he was like a 23-year-old pastor.
A Christian
pastor who just
managing
got married.
An Arab hookah bar.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Who's raising money for families that don't have health insurance down there.
Ah, look at that.
But it made me think that's kind of a typical Young Turks listener.
Right.
Random. Utterly random.
Random, trying to do good in the world,
yeah.
And, kind of guy that conservatives would hate.
But when he was like a pastor, I'm like, have you listened to Cenk talk about religion? Like, are you really a fan of the show?
Well, look, we get those emails all the time saying, God, I really wish you wouldn't say that, right, about religion. But we got to agree to disagree on that one. And that happens all the time. And it's like if I have Christian friends, Muslim friends, Jewish friends, and they really believe, it's not like I eliminate them. I'm like, oh, that's it. You can't be my friend.
But what if they're Hindu? They're gone?
Oh, well, obviously the Hindus.
Hindus and Buddhists? Nah.
Dismissed out of hand.
All right.
Okay, so like friends, you agree on some things and disagree on some things. What can you do, right?
That's true.
Right. So, but I love that story. And by the way, so he's a Christian pastor who's trying to help the poor by getting them health insurance. Actually, the conservatives should love him, right?
They should.
Because he's doing charity, right? Yeah. And he's trying to handle it without the government.
But he also
because the government won't help.
But he also might be enjoying his life. And so if he's having a good time, it's suspect.
Right. And he's a pastor doing liberal causes. And as we talked about yesterday on the show, this website, Conservapedia, is trying to do a new version of the Bible where they edit out all the liberal parts of the Bible.
Beyond ridiculous. I mean, I grew up Catholic, which I'm sure a lot of people out there, it's whatever. And I kind of slowly lost my belief, like from teenager through my 20s and stuff, to the point now I'm like, no, not really. But I mean, I grew up on it, and when you read the New Testament, I mean, even if you say, okay, this man is not divine, because he never really comes out in the Bible and goes, yeah, dude, I'm Jesus Christ, like, divine. He never really says that.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that either.
No, he doesn't say that. But if you just look at him as a person and what he did, and, to read the books of the Bible that are written, closest to, at least in our modern Bible, closest to by the people who might have been there, like the book of John, there's nothing in the Republican Party platform that, like, jives with the book of John.
Well, that's why it's got to be edited out, Wes.
It just, it really doesn't. I mean, if you look at what Christ did in terms of a political sense, it's like, the story of the Pharisees or something. It would be the idea of somebody, the equivalent, walking into the trading floor at Wall Street today and, like, unplugging all the machines and screaming and yelling at everybody and then kicking their butts out the door. Like, it's not like a really strong capitalist thing at all.
Not even close. Obviously, almost the exact opposite as Michael Moore argues in his movie Capitalism. And imagine if Jesus Christ actually walked into the New York Stock Exchange, pulled the plug, and started pushing people out the door.
What pissed him off the most, what pissed Jesus off the most, I guess, according to the book, was hypocrisy. Like the people who would go to temple and act all high and holy because they had a good seed, or they act all pious in public, but he had no respect at all for those people.
He is exactly the guy
He couldn't stand those people.
In the current day America, he's exactly the guy that Republicans would despise.
And he would hate them. Man, he would go to town on them. He'd be kicking their asses up and down the media channels.
Yeah? Well, I love the idea of, like, Sean Hannity debating Jesus Christ.
What would Jesus do? He would totally smack Sean Hannity down in a heartbeat.
He'd start with him, right?
I mean, if he's the guy in the book of John.
Right. And look,
if that's who he is.
And there's...
Or who he was.
There's a lot of books.
If he existed.
Right. And there's a lot of questions. But look, like I always say, read the Bible, okay? I'm the first guy to say that. One, because I think that, you get a better sense of all the popular myths out there, okay, as to what it did happen, didn't happen, what's actually in the Bible. But then on a political front, it helps you. If you're a Christian, if you read it, you know that what the Republicans say is Christianity is nowhere near the truth. Not even close.
It's not even close. I mean, not even kind of close. They've probably done more to damage Christianity in the last 20 years than really anything in the last 200, at least in the U.S. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and they do the exact opposite of what they say all the time.
But you get on people. See, I won't get on people for believing. Like when I'm not a believer, but I spend a lot of my time driving around the country with this 65-year-old guy from Canada who used to, put up cell phone towers in Angola and smuggle stuff to missionaries, and he's like hardcore Christian. But he's not a holier-than-thou type or anything like that. He's just the exact kind of person you would expect someone to be if they lived it instead of talked about it.
Let me just say one quick thing about that before we move on to the news of the day. I mean, this is going to sound a little much, but I'm serious. I love believers. Let me give you a sense of it, okay? I'm in Memphis, and a guy's driving me from the airport to the hotel, right? And he talks about how he found God and stopped drinking and how it saved his life and stuff. How do you not love that guy? I mean, he explains how much God helped him, right? I don't want to take away his faith, and I actually don't have any problem with faith, even on an intellectual level, right? But my problem is with the guys who are holier than thou, that are fundamentalists, that are, that say, no, everything in the Bible is true, but except for the parts I don't like, right?
Dude, how about the fact that there's a New and an Old Testament, and the whole idea of the New Testament is that all that stuff you read about in the Old Testament?
Right. And so I don't like the hypocrites and the fundamentalists and the literalists, right? And I have no problems with the believers. But the reason I get on religion, and a lot of people don't get this, is because I just don't think it's true. It's not.
I don't think it's true either. But
so I'm not trying to offend people. That's not my aim, right? I'm just trying to tell them, which is what I do on the show all the time, what I think is right. And I don't think it's right. Now, that doesn't mean God doesn't exist. I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm qualified to even talk about whether God exists.
No, God may exist, but so may the flying spaghetti monster.
Right. No, but I'm not even against the idea of God existing. I'm against these particular religious texts because I don't think they're true, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know how to say that without offending people. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good point. I always think it's amazing when people who believe in religion but don't believe in evolution can't see the very clear evolution of religion.
That's ironic.
As an institution. It always amazes me. I mean, there is no Satan, in the Old Testament. In the Torah, there's no Satan.
Right.
Doesn't exist.
Right.
That was an idea that came out of Zoroastrianism, which was kind of popular around the time that Christianity came. They're like, oh, yeah, let's use some of that.
Yeah, it's called shaitan.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's use some of that. Let's get some shaitan in here.
Right.
Mix it up.
And when you read the history of it, I mean, you see how all of the mythology poured into what became our religious text. And, people say, oh, look, Cenk, look, the New Testament amended the Old Testament, as you said. Well, you know what's in the Old Testament? A man shall not lie with another man. Okay, so I guess that's out, right? Genesis is in the Old Testament, so I guess that's out, right?
Yeah.
So, but then when you get into these discussions, then people's heads start to explode.
Well, because it's like people think you have to either take all of it totally seriously or none of it totally seriously. And a lot of it is like, if you think back to who our ancestors were and everything else, they couldn't explain physically the way things work. I mean, we can barely do it now. We don't know for sure what the nature of the universe is. Not even close, unfortunately. But, and so they come up with stories for it. I mean, you want to know why there's a flood story? Because agricultural societies always live near rivers. And guess what happens to rivers? They flood.
Of course!
So, yeah, everybody's got a flood story. It's like, and they wrap it up in the mythology. But people can never really go back and say, yeah, my ancestors, they were monkeys, man. They didn't know what they were talking about. Like, no one can quite do that. So you have to give it a nod.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Culturally, at least.
It's absurd that we still believe in things that people came up with thousands of years ago because they literally didn't know any better.
Not at all.
Yeah, they didn't know that the Earth revolves around the sun.
They didn't know how people got pregnant.
Okay, they didn't know the Earth was round. They didn't know anything, so they came up with stories. And bless their hearts, they were fun and interesting stories. They stuck around for an amazingly long period of time. But to still believe those stories literally,
And to really think you should be killing people or hurting people because of those stories?
that's the part
Really?
that really gets me. And that's where I
Really?
get emotional about it. Whether it's the wars that we start, whether it's in the U.S. or whether it's in the Muslim world, or whether it's on an individual level where they go and, do the female circumcisions or the stonings and the honor killings and on and on
It's
it goes.
ridiculous. It would be like somebody going out and murdering someone in 100 years, like over C-3PO or Luke Skywalker, and who is better. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No, it's not who's better. It's,
Whose path are they following?
Right. Or did C-3PO really say that, or did he not
really say it?
And,
or was it implied?
And they'll have different interpretations of his boop, 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 boop. No, that's the other one.
That's R2-D2.
R2-D2.
That's a little one. You need to work on your geek a little bit.
Okay, I do. I'll do that over the break. All right, when we come back, Jonathan Ticini, Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. Jake and Wes with you. Now, I want to tell you, we've been talking about unreasonable Republicans for a long time. I want to talk a little bit about a reasonable Republican. You might be surprised by this name. It's Jesus' favorite guy, Joe Scarborough. For some reason, he gets under Jesus' nerve, for the same reason as me, actually, because he always seems to have this smug attitude like he knows better than you. He emits it through the television. It's really grating on the nerves to look at.
I have that same grating quality, and you invite me on your show all the time.
I don't think so. No.
No, I do. I'm that obnoxious.
No, you have a self-effacing quality that Scarborough would never even dream of, okay? That he would never contemplate. Let's put it that way. So, but look, he's on some issues, he really is being quite reasonable. And you got to be fair and call it as it is. And a while back, no one noticed, but he wrote in one of these business magazines about how the Republican Party had gotten too enamored with the corporations and protecting the corporations, and that wasn't their job, and that they lost focus on being true conservatives. And being a conservative is not necessarily just going after corporate interests, right? Which I thought was a great article by him, right? And then he came out during this whole Olympics nonsense and said, wrote an article called "Thank You, Mr. President," saying, hey, look, thanks for giving it a shot. All the other Republicans are being, a little crazy here. And, of course, we want the U.S. to get the Olympics. And
yeah, dude, that's jobs for Chicago. That's money to people that live in Chicago.
And the United States
and
of
everywhere,
America.
because they got to fly in here. They got to stay in hotels, rent cars, drive around. They'll take a trip while they're here.
And he, maybe even more importantly, in the midst of that article, he talked about how the Republicans need to focus on the issues and not in this crazy birther stuff and all the vicious smear attacks, etc. And he did it in a way that I thought, hey, you know what? Here's a guy who's at least trying. And as much as, his opinions might grate on us and we might disagree with him on the issues, at least he's having a real conversation, and it's something that you could argue and disagree with, but he isn't being disingenuous about it. So, you got to give him credit there. And with somebody mentioned that Scarborough might run in 2012. Now, it's just fantasy.
For what?
For president, okay? Now, it's a guy just made it up, okay? It was just his wild-ass theory. But you know what? It's not such a crazy theory, okay? Because he's positioned...
Considering the crop of losers they have who are going to run
exactly.
in 2012.
No, but exactly. And he'd be the one guy that is so-called moderate or,
I don't think he's that moderate or Republican.
No, he's not. But like within the scope of the lunatic,
he's just not a freak.
Right. He's now moderate Republican has come to mean non-insane Republican.
Yeah, not a total freak.
Right. So, and he's got a huge platform until then. I'm beginning to think, who knows? Maybe. Right. Anyway, so now on the Olympics, he was reasonable. Some were not. Michael Steele was, chastised by the White House, Gibbs, etc. on cheering for Olympics defeat. He was on Laura Ingram's program, and he was going to explain himself, so this should be good. Let's go to clip number 4, guys.
RNC Chairman Michael Steele. Michael, how'd you like getting slammed by the family guy, as we call him?
I've arrived. My political career is now complete. It's such silliness, and it's so typical Washington inside poop. It just
what?
It means nothing, and the reality of it is, no one, not anything you've said, anything I've said relating to the Copenhagen or Copenhagen, depending on the pronunciation from the administration situation, had anything to do with us not wanting the Olympics here or wanting to have America be successful in getting the Olympics. It had everything to do with the fact that the president is unfocused right now. And we have lurched from 8.5% to now almost 10% unemployment. We've lurched from 15% to some 40% of the $780 billion of stimulus being spent, and the only thing that's stimulated is that unemployment number. And that's what the focus should be on. So am I sorry we didn't get it? Absolutely. I didn't think the president needed to be the ultimate pitchman. The First Lady could have been very effective in making that pitch by herself, as the White House originally intended.
Well, at least we know, though, Chairman Steele, that he did manage to spend a whopping 25 minutes with General McChrystal.
Oh, yeah,
who, when he was in Copenhagen. So,
let me get this right. 4 hours on the Olympics, 25 minutes with the general who's trying to prosecute a war that you wanted to engage in. Okay, gotcha. I understand that.
Of course, they ignore the possibility, as was reported by some of the papers, that the whole point of the Copenhagen trip was to actually meet with General McChrystal without making an enormous deal out of it. Because if he goes to Afghanistan or McChrystal gets called in all the way to D.C., then it becomes an enormous story, right?
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yes, and he was giving a speech in London, McChrystal was, and he got called into Denmark to meet with the president, okay? So I think that was the real deal behind it. Otherwise, they had scheduled Michelle Obama to be at Copenhagen anyway, right? Which she was taking heat for. Now all of a sudden he's like, oh well, Michelle had it covered anyway. Before they were blaming her for being there.
It doesn't matter what they do. They're going to take heat. It doesn't matter.
Of course, they're going to criticize him for every single thing. In fact, this Olympic thing is the perfect example of it. Because how could you really be against it? And they did it anyway. But my favorite part of that clip was the inside poop in Washington. I don't think I've ever heard it referred to that way before. Nicely done, Michael. Always coming up with new things. All right, now we're going to talk to Jonathan Cena. He ran against Hillary Clinton in the 2006 Senate primaries in New York, and he's the author of a new book called The Audacity of Greed. Jonathan, welcome to the Young Turks.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. So tell us about the book. Whose greed are we talking about, and what kind of audacity do we have?
Well, I think there's two levels of the greed. One is the greed that I think we've been reading about and seeing, and frankly that the people are furious about, which is the Wall Street greed, the financiers' greed, the incompetence that really drove us over the cliff. But it's, the CEOs that took tens of millions of dollars in pay and packages and pensions, not to mention sometimes billions of dollars in stock options, and left basically workers with nothing. But I look at the greed as not just the individual greed, but a system that over the last 30 years has denied average Americans the fruits of their labor. So quickly, without getting too econ-focused, productivity has been skyrocketing over the last 30 years, and wages have been flat. And so if you look at where the money went, basically we had an economic system, the so-called free market system, that took from the poor and gave to the rich.
So let's talk about the main reasons behind that, Jonathan. And he, of course, Jonathan Cena is also the executive director of the Labor Research Association. So that shift that you're talking about, why did it happen in your opinion?
Well, I think it's sort of two reasons. One is the decline of the labor movement. If you look at the decline of the labor movement, it mirrors almost that 30-year period that I talked about. So you're now in a situation where the labor movement represents 7, maybe 8% of the private sector workforce. And it's just a fact. The labor movement created the middle class. The labor movement made it possible for people to make decent wages. And as the labor movement declined, basically people got less, to sort of strip it from all the other, figures and stats and all that. And the second thing is, it's the economic system that I think has been blessed by a bipartisan agreement. And it's easy to talk about the Republicans, but what annoys me as a Democrat, sometimes a reluctant Democrat, but as a Democrat who is, running for the U.S. Senate now, it's our party that has in some way failed in its mission, which I believe goes back to FDR, to represent the regular person, the average working stiff. And we have bought into this bipartisan notion of the so-called free market, which, as I said before, really did not share the productivity gains with workers.
All right, but let me ask you a couple of questions about that. One, didn't a lot have to do with jobs moving abroad because they offered lower wages? I mean, isn't that a huge part of this equation as well?
Yeah, sure, and that's part of the economic system. That's not just a national phenomenon; it's an international phenomenon. The reason there's only one reason for so-called free trade or the trading system that we have today. And I say so-called free trade because it's just a marketing phrase. It doesn't really exist in the real world. But it was for one reason only, which is seeking the lowest wage possible. And, the economy it's not like a sunset. It doesn't just, or the sun doesn't just rise in the east and set in the west. The economy is not a natural phenomena. We set up rules that govern that. And as I said, in a bipartisan way, our political system has adopted the notion that we will let companies go abroad, and globally that's true, for seeking the lowest wage possible.
Yeah, but, okay, look, I'm a moderate in this, and so you and I might have some disagreement on it. Isn't that absolutely normal, though? I mean, of course they're going to go abroad to seek the lowest wages. How do you stop that?
Well, I think you have to have a different system of rules. So, for example, in, again, these so-called free trade agreements, they're not at all about free trade. They're actually about restricted trade, because all they do is put forth all the protections for capital investment, and there's almost nothing there for basically societal standards, either labor standards or environment standards. They're sort of patched onto the side, but the overwhelming philosophy behind them is to basically drive down wages and protect capital investment. That doesn't have to be the way it is.
But it's not a matter of driving down the wages. It's a matter of going and finding the low wages. And you know what that does eventually is it brings up the standard of living in other countries. Now, as an American, you might object to that, but for the world, I think that's a good thing.
I'm all for raising the standard of living in other countries, but the fact is that, for example, in many, many countries, they actually work with slave wages. Now, it's true. It's going from maybe climbing over a garbage heap to being totally poor-stricken, but maybe having a few extra cents. But it is in no way making a survivable living for most of the people. So I just think that's a complete phony argument.
No, but what is that? Okay, so they should have no living instead of a survivable living?
Pardon me?
I mean, so they should have no living? I mean, if the jobs don't go there, they're not going to be better off. They're going to be worse off.
Well, what I'm saying is that we have to sit back as a globe, as a planet, as countries that operate in a world trading system, and say everybody deserves some basic living standard that does a few things: gives you shelter, gives you a decent living so you can put food on the table, and you can sort of figure out basic standards. Most of the people in the world, 2 billion people, live on $2 a day, and until we have a trading system that is willing to,
I think it's too idealistic. I'm sorry.
A trading system that is willing to embrace real living standards, then the rest is not.
No, but that's crazy. Look, Jonathan.
Why is that crazy?
Because what are you going to do? You're going to go to a country that's incredibly poor and say to them, no, you have to have all of a sudden real living standards, and you have to have X, Y, and Z, and I'm not going to move the jobs there until you have that. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
But they're not paying those people wages that they can really live off of or build an economy off of. They're paying them slave labor.
It's exploitation.
Okay, but so it's the egg and the chicken problem. I mean, so you say, I'm not going to give you any jobs until you improve your standard of living? How does that make sense?
Here's what I'm saying. Right now we have a trading system that is based on pushing down wages and driving people and seeking out the lowest wage. And that doesn't have to be so. Now, that's been set up by the World Trade Organization and a whole bunch of countries that negotiate this stuff without the input of what I call civil society. You can create a different system that says if you go around the world, if you go to X country, there's a basic standard. I'm not saying they're going to have the exact same amount of money as someone here, because there is a different standard of living, but you have to have a basic standard. What I said before, you have to be willing to pay people enough to have shelter, to have basic food, and
you want all the countries to pass that? You want China to redo their whole system of government and
well, understand this. Well, yes, the answer
and
is
guarantee all those rights to their people? That's not going to happen.
Well, it's not going to happen because we allow it to happen that way. This isn't
No, but then you're going to stop all trade. If you say, hey, China, change your whole system of government, otherwise we won't trade with you, then you'll get into a giant trade war.
Well, again, China needs markets. It can't operate in closed borders. So, in fact, China does. Let's be clear. China does not have a free trade system. China, the only way China works well is because it gives Walmart a place to come where it actually controls wages. I'm all for, actually, a real free market, but it doesn't exist anywhere in the world, and certainly not in China where they suppress wages artificially.
No, I understand that, and you're not wrong about that. But if you don't send those jobs arrived in China, and what happened was initially, of course, you get more pollution, you get more problems, right? But in the long run, the wages rise, and they have risen, right? And in the long run, the standard of living gets better in China. And in the long run, believe it or not, then they begin to do some environmental controls. And when they got the Olympics, I mean, they wiped pollution from their cities. They did it by fiat, their communist government, so it was easier to do that way. But it led to improvements.
My view is that yes, there's no question there was some improvement. You still have tens of millions of Chinese people working in particularly rural areas in deep poverty. And the people who, if you read any of this stuff, the people who work in the urban areas, the conditions they work under are atrocious, both the living conditions, the hours they have to travel just to get to a job that barely pays them a decent wage. So if you're saying, did they rise out of total poverty to something slightly above? For some people, yes. This is a political...
And that's how we make progress. That's realism.
But no. See, okay, I respectfully disagree. This is not an economic issue. It's a political issue. And so if we have the will, and I'm not suggesting this is easy. Right now we have a system that, again, is blessed here in this country by a bipartisan agreement. It's agreed to around the world, mostly prosecuted by the elites, not supported by 95% of the people. It is about politics, so I'm not disagreeing with you if your point is that it's politically very difficult to change. You're absolutely right about that.
No. I'm talking about realistically, that's how you improve people's standard of living. You do it incrementally, you do it in a rough way, you do it in a way that we're not comfortable with, et cetera, et cetera. It's not we don't live in the ideal world. We live in a world where progress is incredibly incremental, and you're lucky if you can get it.
All right, so my view is this way. The reason we perhaps have a world that you are describing is because people don't have the power, particularly at work. I would say that when Henry Ford and the people in the pre-war era said, well, that's just the way it is, that's why people formed unions, because people said, no, that's not the way it is.
No. Let's be clear on that.
Let me.
No, because that's a fine point. I'm not disagreeing with you. That's a fine point, but you're missing my point. No. I'm not talking about the way things are in our government, so we should just accept it. I would never say that. I'm talking about human nature, and you can't, as much as we'd love to, we can't change human nature.
Well, what's the human nature part of
it? When, as far as progress is concerned, people don't just say, all right, well, let's have all these great new rules, and boom, China, you get a better standard of living. You do it incrementally, and it's a painful process, et cetera. I'm not saying leave the American government as it is, because we're number one. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a conservative. Okay, right. I'm not a Republican. I get it, but I think that this is the realistic way that you get progress.
But the incremental steps that we've been taking, when you call realism, it's been, in my view, framed by a particular worldview of the free market and so-called free trade and so on. I agree with you that it needs to be done incrementally, but I look at it from a different part of the lens, which is that if we actually said we're going to build a world that's going to have basic living standards in the way I described before, then it is a different conversation.
All right. So we disagree on how to get there. That's okay. Let me ask you one other question. We're talking to Jonathan Cena. He's the executive director for Labor Research Association, the author of The Audacity of Greed, and he's ran against Hillary Clinton in 2006 in the Democratic primaries. You're going to run again in the Democratic primaries against Gillibrand?
I am in the Democratic primary against Kirsten Gillibrand, and primarily because of what we all just discussed. It isn't even about the fact that she is deeply disliked and deeply unpopular in the state for supporting the National Rifle Association and all sorts of other things. It's really about the moment in time that I think people are angry, partly because of the Audacity, but I also think that people share a lot of commonalities about trying to change that. It's not an easy thing to do, but I do think people are ready for some dramatic change, and this is the moment to do it.
So, Jonathan, how do you win? That's the part that's so hard.
This race is totally winnable. It is all about the money. You're absolutely right. Unlike when I ran in 2006, there was not a single day that I thought I could win that race because of a whole lot of things. Senator Clinton was very popular. She was actually running for re-election, and she actually did not support the National Rifle Association. Even though I disagreed with her, she was very popular. Right now I'm running against someone who was appointed, has never been elected, is deeply unpopular, as I said, supported some of the most extreme organizations like the National Rifle Association, supported big tobacco, very unpopular, but you're absolutely right.
How do you get the money out without, how do you get the word out without money?
It's going to be tough, and that we'll see. We are now, we're putting together fundraisers, the whole way things that operate in this world, and we will see. She is going to raise a lot of money from the pharmaceutical industries, Wall Street, and so on. We're trying to raise it from, in some way, like the Obama model, with smaller donors, but there's a whole lot of fundraisers and events we're having all across the country and certainly all around the state.
Well, obviously the people who listen to this interview know that you're a real progressive, more progressive than I am, certainly on the trade issues. So how do people donate to you, or what's your website?
It's Jonathan Tassini, TASINI.com.
All right.
And we'd love not just to have your money and your lovely donations, but also people's energy and involvement in the campaign.
All right, there you have it. Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. It was an interesting
thanks
conversation.
for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
All right. Young
Bye.
Turks. We'll be right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk and Wes with you today. Now I want to go to something that happened on MSNBC. We've been talking about this guy a fair amount recently because he's been doing good work. I'm really surprised by it, to be honest with you, but all the credit in the world to him. Dylan Ratigan, calling out the corporate guys who've captured the government as corporate communists, and he had Betsy McCoy on. And do you know her? She's the one that came up with all the death panel nonsense.
Oh yeah.
And how they were going to do euthanasia on senior citizens.
Eviscerated
exactly.
like a few weeks ago.
Exactly, right? And she's connected to the industry, and that's where she gets her funding. So
God, how could she go back on TV after that?
Because that's what she does, and she doesn't care. All she wants to do is confuse people, right? Because her job isn't to win the argument; it's to throw enough crap out there so some people get scared and they just lose some people. This is a perfect example of it. She's on with Anthony Weiner, Congressman Weiner from New York, on Dylan Ratigan's show, and all that Ratigan's trying to do is ask her, how do you do cost containment? Okay, you're against the public option. And I love this because I think the same thing. Okay, all right, you're against public option, but give me something. Tell me anything that does cost containment. Now, she's not interested in that because she's secretly getting money from the healthcare companies who don't want cost containment, because then you're containing their profits, right? So, or in a matter of speaking, of course, that money eventually gets funneled to them. So all she's going to do is try to distract and fearmonger. It's an interesting couple of minutes of television. Okay, let's watch, because Ratigan does not let her get away with it. Here we go.
You are missing the major issue. The major issue is that these bills are a medical assault on seniors. Covering the uninsured is an important goal.
I want to talk about. No, I want to talk about that.
We're going to run out of time. No, seniors need to know what's going to happen.
And I want to do that. But first, I want to address. I agree with you, but I want to address the cost issue first. How do you reconcile the fact that health insurance companies have an antitrust exemption right now? You've got 80 or 90% of the market in a lot of states in this country that have only one provider, so there's no competition. You've got an effort by Ron Wyden, Olympia Snow, others trying to create real choice for all of us to participate in exchanges, and the Senate can't even bring that sort of thing to a vote.
Because
how do you manage for cost?
Yes,
Forget the public option. You bring in whatever plan you want. I just need cost containment.
Number one, we have to have tort reform. In New York...
I disagree with you because that's as a percentage... But you can finish after I make the point that as a percentage of an incremental cost, tort reform is a very minor percentage of the cost.
Not true in New York State. Not true in New York.
In the country,
Bronx,
it is true.
Yes, it is true in some parts of the country. In the Bronx, for example, it adds 10% to the cost of medical care, 5% in medical liability insurance, 5%
Why
in
would you start with tort reform when you have an antitrust exemption for health insurance companies and a politician?
You asked me for a list, and I'm not finished.
Well, let's start with the biggest chunk. Let's start with the biggest chunks of meat. It's not statistically. It's just not.
And by the way, the CBO is already... Hold on, Dylan. Actually, you don't have to trust Dylan. You can ask the CBO. Here, let me get a word in edgewise, Betsy. You don't have to trust any of us. CBO has asked the question, what if you eliminated 30% of all tort claims in the country? How much would rates go down? They said 0.04%. Why is that? 48 out of 50 states already have tort caps. The insurance companies take the difference. The problem is not that the money isn't getting saved.
It's the defensive medicine, it's not just the liability premium.
But the insurance companies take whatever savings that they get and put it in their pockets. How do you get them to compete?
How do you get them to compete? How do you get rid of the corporate communism that is destroying our country right now?
That's a preposterous statement.
Really? How is that preposterous?
It is a preposterous
you explain to me how that's preposterous.
Politicians in each state that have eliminated the competition by imposing so many mandates and so many rules that in New York State, for example,
hundreds of policies
it
in the
is
state.
true.
We have hundreds of policies,
And
but they don't compete on price.
Nobody's competing.
They're all the same.
No one
They're
is
not competing on
competing to
price,
serve the customer. Everybody's competing to shed risk to the taxpayer. And shedding risk is not capitalism.
I'm not defending the
shedding
insurance
risk is
companies. What I'm
stealing.
saying-
He's asked you how you cap costs. You have an answer for that, by the way?
Yes, I had a very good answer.
Which is?
That,
Not
first
tort
of all,
reform.
no,
Doesn't
we
count.
need to educate people
I agree with
to
that.
eat properly and
Agreed.
take care of their health.
Agreed.
We've done it with cigarette smoking,
Totally
and we
agreed.
can do it
It's in
with
the bill.
obesity as well.
in the bill.
Uncontested. Our primary
And it's in
issue
the
is
But
we have
I'm not going to cut costs by devastating seniors, and that's
No,
what
nobody-
Anthony wants
you're
to
gonna
do.
come
here to try to scare
He is
seniors. You're in the wrong
supporting
place.
a $500
You're in the
billion
wrong place.
cut.
We're trying to deal with an anti-competitive structure for the provision of service in this country to 305 million people who want to have health
public option
care.
is
Did I
anti-competitive.
say public
What
option?
is your...
But my
How
opponent
do you
here
deal?
said it.
You're not answering the. I'll ask one more time.
It's a
I'll ask
silly
one more
question
time.
because it's not the big issue.
Good
The
luck,
elephant
Dylan.
in the room
Good
here
luck, buddy.
is that all these bills are devastating care for seniors, and the Baucus bill is the deadliest
Look,
of all.
you want to scare
Because not only does it cut
seniors
the
because
funding,
you want
but
to
it
scare
empowers
seniors
the
because that's your
government to
business.
actually
But Dylan's
provide
time.
cost and quality guidelines
Understood.
that will tie the hands of doctors.
So let's talk
in
about
treating
seniors. I'm going to make the point to the audience that you did not acknowledge or deliver an answer to
You're
my
not a
question.
very fair moderator, you
Well, you're not a very fair answerer. So there you go.
That's
Okay,
not
takes
true.
one to know one. But let's deal with your issue of seniors. But I do want to make the point that you were unable to answer the question of restoring competition and choice.
I love that I just want to make to a point to the audience that you did not answer the question. To be fair, she did. She said tort reform, which is 0.04% of the cost, as Wiener pointed out. He came in with facts. Now, that's not fair when you're arguing with Betsy. She's not arguing based on facts, right? And she said eat right. Those were her two answers for cost containment. And at the end, when she was absolutely stuck because he asked the question 4 times, she said, oh, that's not really the major issue. Cost containment is not a major issue in healthcare reform?
You don't even want to hear what my solution is.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Nationalize every one of the health insurance companies. Nationalize them. Straight out going, yeah, you know what? That apparatus, because it's like, it's something almost akin, when he said, communist, corporate communism. It's like the apparatchiks in the Soviet Union in the 70s and the 80s. You have a couple people who control the levers of resources, and they just suck everything of value out of it. And you're screwed if you're at the bottom of it. And they're only in that position not because they actually know anything, but because they, played the little court politics games and the corporation rose up.
Now, you're saying the first part about nationalize it all because it's already been taken over. It's just not by us.
They're not
right?
giving you health care. It's a financial shell game with the money. The HMO isn't giving you health care. The insurance company isn't paying for your health care. I mean, they're not giving it to you. It's how the money is allocated and resourced. And if you think, okay, like let's say this is healthcare, and here's all the money you put into it at the top, and here's this little drip of medicine that comes out to the bottom, and there's all this water still in here that's being paid to, the head of the company. Like one of those guys, makes something like $100,000 an hour?
Yeah, one of
the companies.
One of them has already made $750 million.
I mean, it's insane. And,
$750 million.
And by the way, I'm not saying nationalize the healthcare system, because I think people that invent drugs and everything else, yeah, they should get a profit out of that, because they risked something to do it. But the health insurance companies aren't. They've seized it. They've got control of it. I mean,
so when you say nationalize the healthcare industry, healthcare insurance,
I take their damn businesses away from them.
So you're just saying single payer?
Yeah,
and that's perfectly normal solution that, of course, in Washington is considered verboten, not even close. They didn't even consider it.
We live in strange times where people can't see what's right in front of their face.
Now, the thing is, I'm not in favor of single payer, okay, because I'm not sure. That's why I like the public option, because it injects more competition, and I want to see how the government does versus private industry, right? But the problem is,
why not just take all the workers in the insurance companies and say, hey, man, we'll pay you a living wage and benefits. We know you know what you're doing. You're going to keep working for the company, but we're going to control it, and it's not going to be run for huge profit. And your boss down the corner who works 2 hours a day isn't going to get paid $20 million a year.
Mm-hmm. and I hear you on that. See, the thing is, I think that's almost a radical solution. Not almost, it is a radical solution.
It's a very radical solution.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I'm even entertaining it, or we're having this conversation, is because what we have now is radical. It's radical in the opposite direction, okay? It's been set up so that the government's already gotten into it, but only to help the corporations. Every single thing helps to limit competition. I mean, that's what that debate was about. Why? Dylan Radigan keeps saying, I'm a goddamn capitalist. Give me competition. And there is no competition. It's set up so the corporations win no matter what. And so if they have this radical takeover of the system, then yeah, then I'm willing to entertain your idea of a radical takeover for the people, right?
Why not?
But the reality is it shouldn't have to be that way. And the problem is, honestly, it's not a healthcare problem. It's a campaign finance problem because our politicians are bought and sold by these lobbyists. So as long as they are, we're going to have the wrong kind of healthcare system, the wrong kind of finance system, the wrong kind of defense system, the wrong kind of every system, right? Now, since I enjoyed that debate so much, I do want to give you one last clip from it. Radigan and McCoy went after each other one more time, and it was amusing. Let's go to clip number 11.
And that is
why do you want to protect large employers, unions, and health insurance companies at the expense of patients and taxpayers? I'm talking about health care.
I spend my day
If you're a patient advocate, why are you in favor of systems that give patients less options, fewer options?
This will go down in history as one of the most browbeating interviews in television history.
I hope that it does, and maybe you'll learn at that point then to answer questions as opposed to go on television and cast accusations.
Let me finish.
Come on, you got to respect that.
I like that.
That was a lot of fun. Nicely done, Dylan. Nicely done. All right, now a couple of quick notes on what they were discussing. Healthcare reform, in this case, particularly the public option. Schwarzenegger, I'm sorry, not the public option, overall healthcare reform. Schwarzenegger has come out in California and said, I'm in. I think we should do healthcare reform. Now, it's a curious thing because a number of Republicans have come out and said this recently. Tommy Thompson, former health secretary for Bush.
Dude, it's killing corporations. You have to pay health insurance for your employees. That's a hell of a lot of money.
It is. And the way that
you can't compete. China doesn't pay health insurance for their corporations. They don't pay it. Nobody does but us because we're the only state that doesn't cover people.
You know, and I was reading about how it came about today in an unrelated article, right? And you know, it was just an accident. You know, like it's not a well thought out idea that, hey, we should have employer-based health care, right? Because not a lot of other countries do.
No,
right?
you make your companies really non-competitive.
Yeah, because you've loaded them up with all this cost. It was just one simple law passed by the government that said, oh, by the way, and they had no idea of the consequence of it, if the employer helps with your health care, it'll be tax exempt. And next thing you know, 50 years later, employers, because that's such a powerful incentive, as it turned out, as healthcare costs grew and grew and grew, that we developed the system almost accidentally.
Yeah, because healthcare in the 50s was what? Like, hey, you just had a heart attack? Take these aspirin, call me tomorrow. Let me know how it works out.
That's basically what it was. So now, of course, those costs are out of control, and we have the system that we did not necessarily intend. And so now that's why these Republicans, I feel, and, you know, former Republican Mayor Bloomberg also came out in favor of it, and a couple other guys. The other thing that I was worried about is Tommy Thompson said he was in favor of the Finance Committee version. The Finance Committee version is a pretty bad version of health care reform. You know, there's the Baucus bill where you have the mandates where you have to buy it from private insurance, no cost controls, no public option, nothing to control the cost, okay, what we're all worried about. So I'm thinking that these Republicans are like, yeah, not bad, not bad. I know for political reasons the guys in office
then
can't
we
vote
can
for
really
it.
screw the poor.
Exactly. So the corporations win, and the Republicans in office don't have to get their hands dirty because they want to be able to run against it later when it screws up. But the Republicans that are out of office, they're like, oh, pass the word. This is good. This is good. Let's get this thing passed.
No, it's a good deal for them.
So don't get too excited when you see the Schwarzeneggers and the Tommy Thompsons of the world coming out in favor of this. And Bill Frist, too, and I gave him credit the other day. But, you know, if you think about it, if it's the Finance Committee version. But, no, I gave Frist credit, to be fair, to Frist, because he also came out in favor of the public option, which the corporations are not in favor of. Right, so he was a little different than the other guys. Okay, now, meanwhile, one last thing for you guys in the minute that we have left. a unique thing going on in the state level that I really like. In Nebraska and in North Dakota, the Democratic Party has passed resolutions saying we're in favor of health care reform with a public option, and we wish our senators would take note of that. Okay? Now that's Senator Ben Nelson and Senator Kent Conrad that they're aiming that towards. And it's an interesting little tactic that they're using. They say, hey, look, we're just telling you. And these are not the Democrats within those states. That would be obvious, right? But it's the Democratic leadership within those states.
It's the politicians themselves. I talked to some people actually at the American Wind Energy Conference back in May who were part of the Growers Union in Nebraska, and they had nothing good to say about the guy.
Oh, that's interesting.
We can talk about that off.
All right.
Off radio.
Or another show. Okay. Young Turks.